Hello, we're back following that bonus coverage episode number 34, where we talked about two very unusual plays. But this is episode 35. We're at Minute Maid Park in Houston, Texas, and we'll talk a little bit about how we got there when we got to the slide. The game is the Blue Jays against the Astros, and the park is Minute Maid Park, or at least it was up until the beginning of 2025. At the beginning of this year, 2025, Minute Maid Park, so long, Dyken Park, hello. I had to check what Dyken Park was all about, who the sponsor was, and apparently it's a company in Japan that, among other things, makes air conditioners. Now, Minute Maid is a beautiful park, and typically, as I've told you many times, Carol and myself walk around the parks when we get there early. You can see we got there early, there was nobody in the stands. But I do want to make one point about this area right up above my left shoulder. I am a train enthusiast, and Minute Maid Park has its own version of Met's Apple. That is an 1862 replica locomotive that runs along a track that is right there up along the left center outfield fence. When Houston does good things, that train comes into play, and we'll talk a little bit about how and why when we get into the slide. In terms of episodes on the horizon, we only have four, I think. We have two ballparks, including this one, Minute Maid, and then we venture north to Dallas to take in Globe Life Park. And then, following that, we'll talk in a episode about the various museums related to baseball that we have visited over our baseball journey. And then finally, our last episode will be a reflections episode with some insights and thoughts and just how we felt about this journey and what it really meant to us. It was a special journey. But with that, we're going to flip to the slide and make it large enough so that you can see it. And I'm going to put this right there so you can see all the pictures on this slide. If you remember our last episode where we wrapped up that West Coast trip, that was in 2019. It was in September of 2019. And our plan had been in April of 2020 to make the trip that we didn't make until April of 2024, as you can see in this first bullet. One thing led to another. We were delayed 4 years by COVID and other commitments to finish up this particular wonderful journey to all of the baseball parks in Major League Baseball. We had our trip and reservations all set. And again, we were going to drive, we weren't going to fly. So there really were no flights that we had to deal with, but we had to undo all of the hotel reservations. And we also had to undo our baseball tickets as well. Okay, so what did we do when we took this trip? Well, there is a very interesting map in the center, right below that little image of me, that thumbnail of me. And it shows the lasso of our road trip. This happened to be our longest road trip. So this was our final road trip, and it was also our longest. It was nearly 4,000 miles long, 3,900 miles, and we visited 16 unique states. There's actually 23 listed here because we visited some on the way home that we had visited on the way out. But 16 unique states, 3,900 miles. I think we had a 34 or so 100-mile trip down to Miami and back. And then our West Coast trip that we just talked about in the prior episode was 2,400 miles, but that included some flights as well. So, what did we do? Well, on our way to Houston here, we stopped at a couple of different locations. This third bullet tells you right here. We stopped, first of all, in Bristol, Tennessee, which is also right across the border from Bristol, Virginia. And you can see a sign here. And I think the street that kind of straddles the two states is called State Street. But this sign really reinforces the fact that you take one step to your left, you're in Virginia. You take one step to your right, you're in Tennessee. So we stopped in Bristol. It was a very nice small town. It was just a convenient amount of distance for us from our home to get to our first significant fun spot to stop, which was Huntsville, Alabama. We'll talk about what we had done in Huntsville shortly. Then from Huntsville, after a couple of days there, we ventured to New Orleans. We stayed a few days in New Orleans and saw several sites that you'll hear about from some of the pictures on this slide. And then finally, we traveled to Houston. And in addition to the game, a wonderful game, we saw many attractions in Houston as well. So now I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the places we stopped, but I'll also mention this, of course, is a link to the photographs that we took along the way. It includes all of the various locations through Houston, and then the following album that we'll get into on the Globe Life visit would include Dallas, and then, of course, all the sites that we stopped on the way home from Dallas. And we'll talk about those in episode 36. Okay, so in Huntsville, which, oh, by the way, is a NASA location, it's where rocket testing for the Apollo Saturn V and related rockets took place. And there is quite a NASA presence in Huntsville. We enjoyed the opportunity to visit the NASA facility there. And I think this image and that image are from the NASA facility in Huntsville. I believe this may be as well. This is actually the Saturn V with the Apollo capsule on top, but the rocket is laying down rather than standing up. And there is a building that encases that huge rocket assembly. And Huntsville is the place where Wernher von Braun went following his move to the United States at the end of World War II. He, of course, was a German who played a role trying to develop the V-2 rockets in enough time to make a difference for Hitler and the Germans in World War II. Fortunately, that did not take place. And secondly, fortunately, Werner came to the United States and really advanced the NASA program to get to the moon with the NASA team there. So anyway, we saw NASA facilities in Huntsville. Among other things in Huntsville, I needed to practice. Now, why did I need to practice? This is me at the hotel in Huntsville with my camera and a tripod. And you can see I've got my sunglasses on. Well, it just so happens that by scheduling this trip in April of 2024, we scheduled it around the occurrence of a full solar eclipse, a total solar eclipse, which would be visible in Dallas. And so we were destined for Dallas on the day of the total solar eclipse. And I had invested in a solar filter for this particular camera. I had two cameras. This one, well, I had two cameras and I had two different lenses that I could use on this camera. This longer one, which we'll talk about at the very end, but also a more modest zoom. And I elected to get a solar filter for the modest zoom lens. And what I was doing here is actually taking this shot. Now, this is an image taken on that bright sunny day with that very camera and my solar filter. And what it allows you to do is take pictures of the sun. And you have to be careful, of course, when you're looking at the sun or in that general direction. So focusing and just getting the sun into the field of view of the camera is a bit of an issue. So I figured prior to the actual solar eclipse, I had better practice this. And so that's what I was doing at the hotel there in Huntsville, Alabama. Okay, I think that may cover the Huntsville, Alabama images that we had on this particular slide. And it describes these two bullets, the Huntsville NASA Marshall Space Flight Center, where that rocket testing went on, and then my practice for the April 8th total solar eclipse with my solar filter on the camera. But we had then ventured from Huntsville, Alabama to New Orleans, Louisiana. And in New Orleans, of course, we saw the St. Louis Cathedral at Jackson Square. And there's my charming wife, Carol, right in front of Jackson Square and the St. Louis Cathedral. But among other things that we did while we were in New Orleans, and we were there for Easter, as this particular bullet says, we saw I think the busiest museum in the United States is this World War II museum. And you can see an image here showing some of the planes that they have inside of that. This is a view of the outside, doctored up a little bit to make it look a little bit more snazzy. And let's see, this is President FDR, Mr. Roosevelt there. He is in a statue form sitting on one of the areas right outside the front of the building. But if you ever get a chance to go to the World War II Museum, I would encourage you to do so. This is one of the green screen pictures that they took of Carol and myself. They put images of the museum behind us, but they also, as you can see for New Orleans, had one for Mardi Gras as well. So we really liked the World War II Museum. And I think if you get a chance to go there, you will too. Another thing that we did is ate very, very well in New Orleans. I'll stop off here. This is the beignets place, Cafe du Monde. And they have special coffee, which now I order through Amazon so that I can get some of their chicory coffee. But we bought some coffee when we were there. And we also ate well during the evenings. And this picture is a picture of our attendant, our waiter at the table, actually making us Bananas Foster. The name of this restaurant is Brennan's, and they are the originator of Bananas Foster. Again, this link shows you a video of my friend here preparing Bananas Foster for Carol and myself. This is just a still image from a part of that video with the max flame, making it a more dramatic photo. But a wonderful meal and a wonderful dessert in a wonderful venue. This shot is outside the Hard Rock Cafe. Again, it was Easter, but things were still festive in New Orleans. Okay, I've babbled a lot about things other than baseball. I am now going to transition to talking about the game that we attended and a couple of things that you'll see on this particular slide about the baseball game as well. Here's a view of the outside of Minute Maid Park. I talked to you about the replica of the engine that's on left center field of the track up above the fence there. And that particular engine, I think what happens when the Astros score is that the whistle goes and the bell rings. I think when an Astro hits a home run, that engine goes on a 40-second journey along the kind of the perimeter there of left field, from left center to left field and back. So it's all meant to be the equivalent of a celebration, kind of like the New York Mets apple. But that engine is one of the pictures I wanted to highlight with regard to Minute Maid Park. I mentioned that's the outside. This is as you come to the entrance, one of the entrances, of course, and of Minute Maid Park. I have a couple of images of players as well. And this is a selfie from our seats at Minute Maid Park. We're both looking very festive and happy there. Now, we came into Houston, and the game we saw was on the 2nd of April. On the 1st of April, there was actually a no-hitter thrown by Houston pitcher, and let's see if I can get his name, Roland Blanco. The Astros won big, 10-zip. Blanco struck out 7 in his no-hitter, but we just missed it by a day. So Houston really had an offensive show. On the 1st of April. The game that we attended was on the 2nd of April. And if you look here at the area where if you click, it'll take you to the box score, you can see that the Blue Jays ended up beating Houston on the second game of the series, 2-1. Both teams had a fair number of hits, 8 hits. And Houston was up 1-zip in the 9th inning, top of the 9th, with 2 outs. And they came very close to winning this game. But after a double play got them those 2 outs in the top of the 9th, Justin Turner for the Blue Jays walked, and then Davis Schneider hit a home run. Well, Blue Jays scored two in the top of the ninth. In the bottom of the ninth, the Astros started off with a single. So you had some hope that they might be starting a rally there or something. And then the the next player struck out, so one out. Then the guy on first who got the single was caught stealing, and then the final batter flew out. So the Astros ended up losing that game 2-1. It was an exciting end of the game. And here you can see it was just the beginning of the season. And Houston was struggling at the beginning of the season. The only game they won was the no-hitter the night before. And so I think I've polished off the images with regard to the game. Yep. Now, in Houston, of course, Houston is another big NASA facility as well. And here is what one of the things that we captured in a photograph outside the NASA facility in Houston. So we saw the NASA facility in Huntsville. We also saw the NASA facility in Houston. Again, I'm a space enthusiast too, and so it was great to be able to visit these two NASA facilities. As I skipped over this particular bullet, again, I had to change the day for the game that we were going to visit just to make reservations and everything work. That change almost had me screw up what day we ended up showing up at Houston for our game, the tickets that we had bought well in advance. Um, Again, just like going to Turner Field on the wrong day, and oh, by the way, getting in there. In this case, I narrowly averted a problem in getting to the park on the wrong day. Okay, so other things we did in Houston that were fun is, well, let me comment just a little bit more of this image. This is a black and white of the Houston skyline from our hotel room, but I thought I'd make it black and white, and then I thought I'd put it together with this image that I took of the sun from Huntsville as I was practicing for the total eclipse. I just thought those two together looked rather interesting. So that's what this photo is of the skyline. Well, in Houston, we saw a museum of science as well as a museum of health. Let's talk about the Museum of Science first. That includes this dinosaur, of course. It was a wonderful museum with all kinds of different opportunities. This large globe was in the atrium, I'd say, for the museum where you enter and arrange for your tickets and everything. And I stood underneath that, and there is a photo in this particular album where I was trying to just indicate I was holding up that globe. But there's that photo from the museum. We also saw butterflies and this guy, a large iguana at that particular museum. Here's a very attractive butterfly. And you can see, I think, I'm pretty sure that's a tag. I got my sunglasses on. Several of the butterflies were tagged, and they asked you to try and record which butterflies tags you had noticed while you were viewing the very humid, very hot area where they had all of the butterflies for you to enjoy. So we had a great visit with the Science Museum. At the Health Museum, there was a lot of things to do hands-on that kept Carol and I out of trouble. There were a number of exhibits with regard to your body on drugs, and this may be the only image I have from that particular health museum, but that was a lot of fun too. We went to the McGovern Gardens. This image up at the top of the various terraces was from that particular gardens, and this very attractive, maybe hibiscus, I'm not sure, was also at the gardens area. Lots and lots to see there. We had wonderful food as well. You can see Carol and myself, we shared this rather huge shrimp cocktail. And let me scan now for any photographs that I have failed to comment on. I did fail to comment on this one. That's a shot of Carol and I from Brennan's in New Orleans, the same place that we had the Bananas Foster. This is one of the very attractive cheerleaders for the Astros standing on the dugout. Again, we had pretty good seats. And I think the only other thing that I haven't commented on so far that I will mention now is this little image here of my lens. I mentioned when I was talking about taking practice shots of the sun to get better at manually setting what the appropriate aperture, shutter speed, ISO, and all the rest needed to be to take a decent photograph. I had replaced my zoom lens, my longer zoom lens, and this is a 100 to 400 zoom lens. And it's actually quite heavy. It gives you a little support here that you can actually put a monopod underneath to help support the camera because it does get to be pretty heavy. But at Houston's park, at Minute Maid Park, that was the first park that I went to where I had actually two camera bodies, and two zoom lenses. So I could just rapidly switch without having to switch the lens. But it helped me get some rather nice shots of the park. Okay, so all of this, very good. We're in Houston. We're destined to move next to Dallas for a couple of reasons. One, of course, is to see the Rangers. And we'll see you then next in episode 36, where we talk about Dallas, our trip home, and all the highlights from the game and the other neat places we saw in Dallas, Texas. So thank you again for your attention. We'll see you again soon.